In a small town, far from the noise of big cities, there was an ordinary-looking school with a quiet music room. The music room hadn't been used much lately. An old piano sat in the corner, covered in dust, with a few broken keys and a bench. That creaked when anyone sat on it. Most students walked past it without even noticing. But for one new girl, it was the most interesting thing in the whole school. She was only 10 years old, new to the area, and didn't talk much. Her classmates didn't know much about her, except that she always sat at the back and brought homemade lunch in a cloth bag. Her shoes were worn out, and her uniform was too big for her. But her eyes, quiet and watchful, noticed everything, especially that piano. Every day after class, when everyone rushed outside to play or go home, she would quietly slip into the music room. She never touched the piano at first. She would just sit and look at it, almost like she was listening to something no one else could hear. One day she finally placed her fingers on the keys, very gently. The sound that came out was soft, shaky, but full of emotion. Days passed. The girl began to come more often, staying a few extra minutes after school when the hallways were empty. Then one afternoon, something unusual happened. A loud, powerful melody filled the school hall. It wasn't loud in a bad way. It was beautiful, deep, emotional, like someone pouring their heart out through music. The school janitor, who was sweeping the floors, stopped in his tracks. Teachers peeked out of their rooms. Students passing by froze and listened. When the music stopped, a few staff members rushed to the music room to see who was playing. There they found the little girl sitting at the piano. One of the strings had snapped from the force, and a couple of the keys looked like they had been hit. Too hard. The piano looked damaged. "Did you do this?" one of the teachers asked, almost in shock. The girl stood up quickly, eyes wide with fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Another teacher said, "This piano is already old. Maybe it couldn't handle rough playing." But the music they heard didn't sound rough at all. It sounded like something from a movie full of feeling. Still, no one believed a child could play like that, especially not a child with no training. And so, they decided the safest thing to do was to tell her not to go near the piano again. That evening, as she walked home alone, her head hung low. She didn't understand why they were upset. She hadn't meant to cause any harm. She just wanted to play. At home, her grandmother saw her face and gently asked what had happened. The girl stayed quiet at first, then whispered, "I think I broke the piano." Her grandmother smiled softly and said, "Maybe the piano wasn't broken by your hands, but by your heart. Sometimes when you pour too much emotion into something, it can shake the world." That night, while the town slept, the story of the mysterious piano sound spread quietly among the school staff and students. No one knew who the girl really was. But something about that moment, something about that music stayed in their minds. And just like that, a quiet girl with a gift no one believed in had taken the first step toward something much bigger than anyone could imagine. After that day, everything changed for the little girl at school. People didn't say anything to her directly, but she could feel it. Some students whispered when she walked by. Few even pointed at her in the hallway. Teachers now kept a closer eye on her, especially near the music room. It wasn't locked, but it may as well have been for her. It was off limits now. She stopped going near the piano. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't. Want to cause any more trouble? She didn't want to be called the girl who broke school property? Every day, she passed by the music room with a small ache in her heart, like a secret that no one wanted to hear. At home, things were quiet and simple. She lived with her grandmother in a small two-room house at the edge of town. Her parents had passed away when she was very young, and her grandmother had raised her ever since. They didn't have much, but her grandmother always made sure she had enough to eat and a warm place to sleep. There was no real piano at home, just a piece of cardboard with drawn keys her grandmother had made for her years ago. It looked silly to most people, just a flat board with lines and numbers. The girl, it was magic. Every night after her homework, she would sit with it and pretend to play. She imagined the sound in her mind, note by note. Her fingers danced across the paper as if it were real. Her grandmother often watched her in silence, smiling softly. She didn't know how to play music herself, but she believed in her granddaughter. One day she would say, "The world will hear what I already see." But the world hadn't listened yet. At school, some students started calling her piano breaker, so others just laughed behind her back. It didn't matter that she hadn't done anything wrong. People already believed what they wanted to believe, and she was too quiet, too shy to defend herself. One afternoon, she stayed back in class to clean the chalkboard. A soft voice came from behind her. "You played that day, didn't you?" She turned around. It was the new substitute. Music teacher. He had kind eyes and didn't look angry, just curious. She nodded slowly. He asked, "Who taught you?" She looked down and said, "No one. I just listen." The teacher looked surprised. "You listen to what?" She pointed to her head and then to her heart. "I hear it inside." He didn't laugh. He didn't call her strange. He just nodded and said, "That's the best place to hear it from." He didn't ask her to play right away. He just let her know that if she ever wanted to come by during lunch or after school, the piano room would be open again, just for a little while, just for her. That night, the girl sat on the floor of her home, fingers on the paper piano, heart full of hope again. For the first time in many days, she felt seen. She didn't know yet what was waiting for her. She didn't know that soon. Her music would leave that small town and travel much farther than she had ever dreamed. But for now, all she knew was that one person finally believed in her, and sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. The next few days felt lighter for the girl. Just knowing that someone believed her made a difference. She still didn't talk much, and the other students still looked at her strangely, but she didn't mind as much anymore. After all, the music teacher had opened the door to the piano room again just for her. One afternoon, when everyone else had left for the day, she slowly walked into the music room. The lights were dim and the piano sat quietly in the corner, like it had been waiting for her. She looked around, then sat down on the bench. Her fingers trembled a little, but she took a deep breath and placed them gently on the keys. At first, she just played softly. She wasn't even thinking. Her hands moved on their own, remembering sounds she had only ever heard in her head. Slowly, the room began to fill with music again, not loud this time, but full of feeling. It was like the piano was speaking with her. Every note felt like a word, every pause like a breath. The music teacher stood just outside the door, listening in silence. Didn't want to disturb her. He had taught music for many years, seen many students try and fail, but this was different. She wasn't reading notes or following a lesson. She was playing from a place most people didn't even know existed. When she finished, she turned and saw him standing there. For a second, she looked worried, like she had done something wrong again? Right. But he smiled gently and said, "Where did you learn to play like that?" She looked down at her hands and whispered, "I didn't learn. I just feel it." He nodded slowly. "That's called a gift." The next day, he asked her to play again, this time while he recorded it on his phone. Said, "It's just for me. I want to listen again later." She agreed, a little shy but trusting him now. Once again, the music flowed from her fingers, filling the room with beauty and sadness and hope all at the same time. The recording captured every sound, every small pause, every note filled with emotion. That evening, the teacher sat at home and listened to the recording over and over. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He'd shared the video privately with a few friends in the music world, teachers, musicians, and composers. He wrote, "This girl has never taken a lesson. She plays from the heart." "What do you hear?" He didn't expect much. But within hours, replies started coming in. "This is real? She's only 10? I've never heard anything like this before." More messages poured in. People were shocked, amazed. One well-known composer even replied, "She's not just talented, she's something special. This kind of gift can't be taught." The teacher was careful not to share her name or school. He just wanted honest feedback. But one of the videos accidentally got shared on a public page, and from there, it spread like fire. By the next morning, the girl's music had reached thousands of people online. Strangers were commenting, sharing, and asking who she was. Some thought it was fake. Others were sure she was a child genius, but the girl knew none of this. She was still walking to school the same way, carrying her worn-out bag, thinking only about playing again after class. She had no idea her life was about to change. No idea that her music, once locked inside a small room, was now traveling across cities and countries. All she knew was that for the first time, it listened, and the world, without even knowing her name yet, had started listening to. The next day at school felt the same for the girl. She walked in quietly, kept her eyes down, and went straight to her class. But outside the school, something big was happening. Her music video had now been shared by thousands of people. People from different countries were watching and commenting, amazed by the little girl who played like a professional, even though she had no training. In the teacher's staff room, phones were buzzing. Teachers who hadn't believed her before were now whispering, "Is it really her?" One teacher opened the video and watched it closely. "This is the same girl we said broke the piano," another asked in disbelief. At lunch, a few students who had once laughed at her were now staring at her, whispering again. But this time their eyes didn't have judgment. They had curiosity. Some even had respect. She didn't know what was going on. She only noticed that something felt different. Even the principal, who had once been strict with her, looked at her with a soft smile in the hallway. Meanwhile, at home, her grandmother's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, school officials, and even music companies were trying to contact them. Some wanted interviews. Some wanted to offer support. Others just wanted to hear her play live. The old phone kept freezing from too many messages, and her grandmother didn't know what to do. That evening, the music teacher gently told her what was happening. "Your video," he said, "it's been seen by so many people now. They love it. They love you." Her eyes widened. "But I didn't show anyone." "I did," he admitted, "but only to a few people for advice. It somehow got out. I'm sorry if that makes you upset." She didn't say anything at first. She looked down at her shoes, then quietly asked, "Are they angry? Like before?" "Oh," he said with a smile. "They're amazed. They want to hear more." It was hard for her to believe. Just weeks ago, she was told not to touch the piano. People were asking her to play again. A local news team visited the school the next day. They didn't show her face at first. Instead, they showed her hands, her music, her story. They talked about the girl who had no lessons, no real piano, just pure feeling. They called her the mystery child musician. And soon, even bigger channels picked up the story. The girl didn't care about the fame. She didn't even really understand it. All she cared about was playing again. She felt safe with the music teacher. He didn't push her or make her feel like a show. He just let her be herself. But the world outside didn't stay quiet. One night, a man from another country sent a video message. It was a famous piano teacher who had trained many great musicians. In the video, he said, "I've seen thousands of students, but your music made me stop everything I was doing. You're not just talented, you're rare. If you ever want to learn more, truly grow, I will teach you. For free, no tests, no pressure, just music." Her grandmother wiped tears from her eyes as they watched. The little girl sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees. She looked at her old cardboard piano and smiled. She never played for attention. She never wanted to be famous. She just wanted someone to hear her now. The world had not only heard her, but was waiting for more. After the message from the famous piano teacher, everything started to move faster. More people were reaching out, some from other countries, some from big music schools, and even from music festivals. They all wanted to meet the little girl who had touched so many hearts with just a piano and her feelings. At school, things felt completely different now. The same students who once whispered behind her back now came to sit beside her. Some asked, "Can you teach us how to play?" Others just wanted to be her friend. She didn't speak much, but she always smiled politely. Deep inside, she was still the same quiet girl who only wanted to play music. The principal called a special school assembly. Everyone gathered in the big hall. The girl was asked to sit on stage with her teacher. The repaired piano was placed at the center. She felt nervous, so many eyes on her, but the music teacher leaned down and whispered, "Just play like it's only you in the room." She took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and let her heart lead the way. As the music started, the entire hall fell silent. No one coughed, no one whispered. It felt like time had stopped. Her fingers danced across the keys like they were telling a story of pain, of dreams, of something no words could ever explain.
Ow.
Some teachers had tears in their eyes. Even the principal was frozen in his seat. When she finished, there was a pause. Then the whole hall stood up and clapped. The sound echoed through the school, just like her music had that same week. A group of people from a music academy overseas flew to her town. They had seen the videos and wanted to hear her in person. When they arrived at the school, they didn't walk in with fancy suits or big cameras. They came in quietly, sat down in the back of the room, and asked the teacher if she could play just one more time. Again, she sat at the piano. Again, she played from her heart. And again, she left everyone speechless. After the performance, one of the Academy members gently said to her, "We've heard many child prodigies before, but your music doesn't sound like it's from a child. It sounds like it's from a soul that has lived 1,000 years." They offered her a full scholarship lessons, a new piano, a chance to travel, even a chance to perform at concerts around the world. It was everything a young musician could dream of. But when they asked her to leave for training right away, she looked down and stayed quiet. Her grandmother spoke softly. "She's still a child. Her heart is in music, yes, but also in this town, in this school, in her little room with her paper piano." The Academy understood. They didn't push. They promised to support her whenever she was ready. They left behind a brand new keyboard, music books, and a kind letter that said, "The door is always open." The girl thanked them with a soft smile. She wasn't in a hurry. Her journey had already begun, and she knew that music wasn't a race. It was a feeling, a path she would follow step by step. Back at home, she sat with her cardboard piano again, not because she needed it now, but because it reminded her of where she started. She placed her fingers on the drawn keys and smiled. The world might be calling her, but she was still just a girl who loved to play. Weeks passed, but the excitement around the little girl's music didn't fade. More people were talking about her online. Her video was now shared on big news pages, music blogs, and even on television. Some called her the quiet star, others said she was a gift from above, but she didn't let it change her. She still walked to school the same way. She still played with her paper piano at home. And every time she sat at the school piano, she played like it was the first time, with feeling, with care, with love. The school decided to do something special. They wanted to thank her, and also show the world that something beautiful had grown from a simple classroom. So, they planned a special music event and named it after her. The room that once held the broken, dusty piano was cleaned, painted, and turned into a new music corner. On the door, they placed a golden nameplate with her name and the words, "Where her music first spoke." She didn't know how to feel about all the attention. Sometimes it was too much. But when she saw the room and saw how many students were now interested in learning music, her heart felt full. For the first time, other kids were lining up to touch the piano she once had to play in secret. On the day of the school event, people from different cities came. Parents, students, teachers, and even some reporters. The girl was asked to perform a special piece. But this time, she didn't want to play someone else's song. She wanted to play something she had created herself. At home, she had been working quietly on a tune. It didn't have a name. It wasn't written on paper. It lived in her heart. It was made of memories of the day she was accused, the fear, the hope, the first kind words from her teacher. The cardboard piano, her grandmother's quiet support. When she sat at the piano that day, the hall fell silent once again. Everyone watched, waiting to hear something special, and she did not disappoint. Her fingers moved slowly at first, then faster, then soft again. The music was full of emotion, like it was telling a story without words. Didn't sound perfect in a technical way, but it felt real. It felt honest. It made people feel something deep. By the end of her piece, many had tears in their eyes. One teacher whispered, "I don't know music, but I understood everything she just said through those keys." When she stood up, the claps were long and loud. Even those who once doubted her were standing. principal came forward and held the mic. He looked at the girl and then at the crowd. "Not long ago," he said, "we almost lost something beautiful, simply because we didn't understand. She was told to stay away from this piano. But today, this same piano became her voice. We are lucky we got the chance to hear it." He turned to her and said gently, "I'm sorry we didn't see you before." The girl didn't say much. She just nodded politely. She wasn't angry. She wasn't trying to prove anything. Just loved music. After the event, she walked home with her grandmother. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with soft orange light. Her grandmother held her hand tightly. "You did good," she said with a smile. The girl looked up and replied, "It felt like I was finally heard." And truly, she was. A year had passed since the girl first sat at that old school piano. Her life was different now, but she hadn't changed much. She still spoke softly. She still played with her paper piano sometimes. And she still walked to school with her head down, not out of fear, but because she never liked too much attention. She had now performed in 5 different cities. Not in huge stadiums, but in music halls, small theaters, and sometimes even at schools like hers. Every place she visited, people listened quietly, and many cried without even knowing why. Her music had a way of touching something deep inside people. It didn't matter if they were rich or poor, young or old, from her town or from another country. They all felt something when she played. She had been offered many chances to move away, study at big schools, even sign with music companies. But she always said the same thing: "I want to finish school first, and I want to keep learning slowly." She didn't want fame. She didn't want money. She only wanted to grow in her own time, with her grandmother by her side and her teacher, who had first believed in her. Her grandmother now smiled more often. She still hung clothes to dry, still cooked simple meals, still lived in the same small house, but their home now had a proper piano gifted by one of the music academies. It stood next to the old cardboard keyboard, which the girl had refused to throw away. One day, she was invited to a special event in another country, a concert for young talents from around the world. Each child would play in front of thousands of people, and many famous musicians would be watching. Her teacher asked if she wanted to go. She thought about it for a few days, and finally said, "Yes, but only if you come with me." They traveled together. It was her first time flying, her first time seeing snow, her first time speaking through a translator. But none of that scared her. When it was her turn to play, she walked onto the big stage with quiet steps. The lights were bright, the crowd was silent, the piano stood in the center, like it was waiting just for her. She closed her eyes. She remembered everything: the broken piano, the people who didn't believe her, the cardboard keys, her grandmother's gentle voice, the teacher's kind smile. Then she began to play. The music that came out wasn't loud, it wasn't fast, but it carried something no one else had brought to that stage. It carried her truth. By the time she finished, the audience didn't just clap, they stood, they cried, they held their hands to their hearts, as if she had played something they had been feeling their whole lives but didn't know how to express. After the concert, someone from the organizing team said she didn't just perform. She reminded us why music exists. Later that night, back in the hotel room, her teacher asked her how she felt. She smiled and said, "I think my music finally found its way home." She didn't need trophies or awards to feel proud. The only thing she ever wanted was for someone to listen, to understand. And now, people from all over the world were listening, not just to her music, but to her story. She returned to her town with quiet steps once again. But this time, the whole world walked beside her, inspired, touched, changed, and in the corner of her home, the old cardboard piano still sat, untouched but never forgotten, because that's where her journey began, and that's where the music first found its voice.